My blade is unbending!
Olberic Eisenberg, the unbending blade of Hornburg himself. The name alone should strike fear into those who wish to bring untold evil to those around them, and if it doesn't, then he'll be the first one there to protect the ones in need of his service, as an honorary knight would decree. And it's not all for talk either. The two main stats that you'll be associating Olberic with is physical attack and physical defense. Out of the 8 travelers, Olberic has the highest physical attack stat in the game, but this is also tied with Hannon. Even so, it's still rather impressive, and thanks to his base job being warrior, he can take full advantage of his physical attack right out of the gate. The second stat in question is his physical defense, which helps tie into his talent, but I'll go into that into a second. As grand as his physical attack and physical defense are, it comes at the cost of having bad elemental attack and bad elemental defense. As a result, not only will he not be dealing as much magical damage overall, but he'll be taking a lot of damage from magic in the process. This can be a bit of an issue when a good amount of the game favors the use of magic overall, but not to worry. If you're in need of a physical tank, Olberic has you covered. Likewise, he also comes with the talent and path action Bolster Defense and Challenge respectively. Bolster Defense is a battle-only talent that allows Olberic to fulfill his role as a dedicated tank even more, as Olberic is able to boost when he defends. This means he could get an additional damage reduction from foes' attacks at an upwards of 75%. For every boost provided, the more damage reduction Olberic gets. This can pair really well with the cover support skill, as that will allow Olberic to take damage for his allies instead of as long as they are near death. For example, if Ophelia is targeted with a physical move and the move in question would knock her out, Olberic can stand in and take the damage for her instead. However, there is one issue with the skill: area of effect moves. Now, there are two kinds of area of effect moves: multi-hit and entire party. The multi-hit area of effects can proc cover since it's just a bunch of single attacks. Meanwhile, the entire party area of effects that hit every traveler at once cannot proc cover. Entire party moves can become more common as the game progresses, but by that point, you should have other skills at your disposal to make use of. Beyond that, there is Challenge path action. Challenge allows Olberic to fight any NPC in the surrounding area so long as he meets the level requirement. This is similar to Hannon's Provoke, only she doesn't have to meet a level requirement. Sometimes this would be necessary to do, as there will be NPCs blocking the entrances to their homes. It's not the most ethical, but it's nice when they have good gear to loot. Anyway, it's fairly basic. You challenge an NPC and fight. If you win, they get knocked out, and stay that way until you re-enter the town. If you lose, nothing happens. You just have to go heal and go back to whatever you were doing. The difficulty of a fight will be determined by the amount of symbols near the NPC when you challenge them. At the very least, the first amount of NPCs that you'll fight should be fairly easy to deal with, since you not only have Olberic's min-max stats, but also the warrior as a base job. The warrior job is going to be Olberic's bread and butter for almost all of the game, as the class is entirely offense-based with little support skills to speak of. This includes damaging moves such as Level Slash, Spearhead, Cross Strike, Thousand Spears, and Brand's Thunder. Level Slash is an all-enemy hitting move. It's rather nice for lining up breaks if all the foes on the field share a weakness to swords. Next, there's Spearhead. Spearhead has a lot of potential during battles, as using the move will push Olberic to the top of the next turn for an action. For example, if a foe is going first on the next turn, you can use Spearhead to get ahead of the foe and then follow up with moves that can break the foe. This usually works best in classes that can provide a lot of weapon variety, as the warrior only has swords and polearms. Then there's Cross Strike, which is a simple yet very damaging sword move that hits one foe of the player's choice. That is similar to Brand's Thunder, only the latter does more damage since it is a divine skill. Finally, there's Thousand Spears, which is a multi-hit spear move that strikes at multiple foes. The amount of times that the spear will hit a target is completely random, anywhere between 3 to 10, where 3 is guaranteed and 10 is the maximum amount. Meanwhile, you have skills that boost the performance of Olberic's battle capabilities, such as Abide and Stout Wall. Abide raises the physical attack stat of the Traveler, and Stout Wall raises the physical defense of the Traveler, both for an indefinite amount of turns. The only supportive, quote-unquote, move in the Warrior's kit is Insight, which makes foes more likely to target the Traveler in question. Similar with Cover's mechanics, it will not work against moves that hit every Traveler at once. However, it does work against multi-hit moves, and as great as all of this is, the amount of focus that is dedicated to being a physical tank limits the potential of Olberic's secondary jobs. Realistically, you can run anything with the right gear, but for optimization purposes, Olberic's innate warrior jobs, stat line, and skills means he can really ever focus on secondary jobs that bolster that role. and one of the few jobs that helps him with that role is the Apothecary. The Apothecary job is arguably one of Olberic's best secondary jobs for several reasons. The first one comes in the form of the stats gained from the job itself. The job grants the equipping traveler 1.5% attack, elemental attack, physical, defense, and critical, as well as 20% HP. The amount of HP gained from the Apothecary job can make Olberic into a massive physical damage sponge, which is essentially handy for challenges as Olberic will be forced to fight by himself in those situations. Speaking of which, wouldn't it be convenient if you had a healer during those one-on-one battles? Well, luckily for you, the Apothecary job comes with First Aid, which is a small SP costing skill that heals for a good amount of HP. Likewise, the job also comes with axes and axe skills. Because Olberic's base job only has swords and polearms, the Apothecary has no overlap with the warrior. As for the axe skills themselves, these are especially good as one is an entire party hitting move that is based on the amount of HP the traveler has, and the other is a variant of cross strike, but with axes. The first axe move can stack with fortitude for an obnoxious amount of damage output, and the other is nice for breaking and other purposes. Speaking of which, the Apothecary job also comes with ice magic, which means Olberic can be a really decent enemy breaker. Axes especially are handy for that as the double axe allows the traveler to attack twice. Overall, it's a very solid job for Olberic. Next, there is the Thief job. The Thief job is also really decent for Olberic as it can help bolster his physical tanking prowess as well as his damage output. Take Shackle Foe and Armor Corrosive for instance. Shackle Foe debuffs the foe's physical attack stat, which can allow for Olberic to tank even more, especially during challenges. Combine that with Saving Grace and you can make Olberic into a massive damage sponge. Meanwhile, with Armor Corrosive, you can simultaneously lower the physical defense stat of a foe and raise your own physical attack stat with a bide to make damage output even grander. Similarly, Olberic gains access to the skills HP Thief and SP Thief, which is essentially 2 dagger attacks. So, if moves become too SP costly or your HP is running low, you can easily recover SP and HP for a good amount by using either move since his physical attack stat is massive. With that being said, if you're looking for the best damage output, we can't not mention the War Master. Of course, one of the best classes for Olberic has to be the War Master. The War Master pairs especially well with Olberic since he has the highest physical attack stat in the game. And by being able to equip every weapon in the game, Olberic is able to amplify his damage output by a great deal. A sword variant of 1,000 spears, an axe, dagger, and staff move that targets every foe, and a polearm and bow move that strikes a single foe for a huge chunk of damage. The amount of damage variety at hand for Olberic with the War Master is beyond amazing. However, there's a catch. While the War Master is really good for Olberic, you might find that the additional sword and polearm skills either make some of the warrior skills moot or are dead on arrival themselves. The warrior job coming with cross strike and level slash makes it difficult for Olberic to use War Master's Guardian Lion Dog sword move over the other two, as Guardian Lion Dog is simply a 1,000 spears variant but for swords. Of course, you can use it for breaking if the foe has weaknesses to swords, but that's about it. Meanwhile, you have the War Master's Quillen's Horn, which is effectively cross-strike for polearms. The same logic can be applied here with the War Master's Spearhead and 1,000 Spears, only that Spearhead has turn-altering shenanigans and 1,000 Spears hits multiple times. However, you may find that having more consistent damage output with Quillen's Horn is better than a dice roll with 1,000 Spears, while 1,000 Spears is better for breaking over Quillen's Horn. At the very least, differentiating SP costs can make it so you can plan out specific moves ahead of time, but by that point in the game you may be relying on damage output instead. And finally, there's the Hunter job. The Hunter job will grant Olberic 3 additional weapon types: axes, bows, and lightning magic. This means Olberic can become a pseudo breakbot with 5 weapon types at his disposal. Likewise, the Hunter job grants access to the Lighthole Trap, which is amazing when it comes to prioritizing turn order. However, this can make Spearhead rather redundant as a move since you'll always be going before the foe if they have the Leghold Trap status. Beyond that, there's not much else I can say on the job. It's a good pick, but I'd argue you're better off using the other jobs mentioned instead. Even so, he's limited in what secondary jobs he can use as is. As previously mentioned, due to the way his stat line is allocated alongside the fact that he starts out as a warrior, Olberic is limited in what roles he can take up. The warrior job lacking any supportive skills means Olberic cannot go into something such as the dancer, as he'll be broadening his roles too much. Moreover, the dancer does not provide anything beneficial to Olberic to make use of himself, as the warrior job already has an attack and defense buffing moves. Likewise, because of his low elemental defense, he can't be a reliable cleric either. Granted, that can be patched up with the right gear, but not only is a good amount of that gear near late game, but that will cut down on his already great stats, and it doesn't change the fact that other travelers do that job much better. Of course, for solo purposes he can use Reflective Veil to reflect back any magic thrown at him, but that's the extent of it. For DPS purposes, Olberic also doesn't have the best magical capabilities, and unlike Therion and Tressa who can stack weapons that buff specific types of magic, Olberic cannot do that as well because he has lower magical attack. Likewise, most of the jobs that grant magic skills do not provide any substantial weapon types. For the Cleric and Scholar, both only come with staves, and for the Sorcerer, it comes with both staves and bows. The Sorcerer job coming with bows can allow Olberic to stack wind boosting magic weapons for strong hitting wind magic. This can also be accomplished with the Merchant job since it also comes with bows and wind magic. However, the combination alone does not warrant any of the secondary jobs as a good option for Olberic in my opinion. And before I continue on, I should at least mention Stat Swap. Stat Swap swaps the physical damage stat for the elemental one. This can allow Olberic to use a bunch of magic if you so choose. However, because it swaps the physical attack set for the magical attack set, you'll essentially be sacrificing the warrior job just to deal magic damage, as you'll basically lose out on a majority of your warrior potential, which I honestly don't believe is a good idea. I personally think it's best to stick with anything physical. So while magic isn't out of the question, it's definitely not recommended, and even though he's fairly limited in his secondary job options, Olberic can still be a strong hitting physical wall, and he does it extremely well, especially with some of the better support skills in the game. One of the must-have support skills that Olberic should have is Surpassing Power. Surpassing Power allows Olberic to bypass the cap of 9,999 damage and extend it to 99,999 damage. This is going to be an important skill a good way through the game, as Olberic will have plenty of attack by that point to easily reach the first cap. However, if you are in early game, you can always run Summon Strength, which is basically a support skill that raises physical attack by 50 points flat. It's rather nice to have early on. Likewise, if you want to focus on being a physical tank, you can always run Physical Prowess and Saving Grace. Physical Prowess grants permanent attack and defense buffs during battles, which can make damage output and defending a whole lot better. Meanwhile, you have Saving Grace, which allows the Traveler to be healed above their maximum HP stat. This can make any Traveler into a damage sponge, but for Olberic specifically, you can bolster his HP stat and defense stat so he's even harder to take down. If you want skills that can help set up a massive amount of damage output, you can run support skills such as Hang Tough, BP Eater, Stronger Strikes, and Fortitude. Hang Tough and Fortitude is a decent combination, as Hang Tough will allow the Traveler to reliably reach the Fortitude range of under 33% HP by negating moves that would make Olberic reach 0 HP so long as he has above 33% HP. BP Eater and Stronger Strikes can work hand in hand, as BP Eater increases the damage output of a Traveler so long as a move is boosted, and Stronger Strikes also increases the damage output if the foe is either broken or if you hit their weakness. And finally, you could try and bank on Patience, which has a 25% chance of allowing a Traveler to act again in a turn. It's not the most reliable skill, but it's really great when the RNG is in your favor. And with that about covers Olberic. Despite being locked to a physical dealing tank role, he still performs extremely well in that niche. If you ended up using other jobs not mentioned in the video, feel free to let me know which jobs you chose and how they worked out for you. I'm always interested in what you have to say. I hope this guide provided insight into Olberic as well as any help along the way. If there's anything else you would like me to cover on the next Traveler, feel free to let me know in the comments section. Likewise, if there is a Traveler you want to see covered next between Cyrus, Primrose, Tressa, and Alphen, feel free to let me know as well. Till then, do the typical YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, ring the bell, and I'll see you later.